Let go. Yeah. Don't know. Oh yeah. It's the original Batman. One time.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, Ashley Empowers. I'm Ashley, and thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Dating with Purpose. Dating with Purpose is a series that I created to showcase and highlight couples who are pursuing healthy relationships with God at the center. Today, I am so excited to be interviewing Kariss and Josh Ferris as they share their journey of dating with purpose.
Thank you so much for having us. We really
Yes.
appreciate it.
So, Karish and Josh, can you just tell people that do not know who you are and what you do?
Got it.
I got it. Okay, so I'm Kariss, and this is Josh, just like you said before. We are photographers, and sorry about that noise. We are photographers. We're business owners. We have 2 kids and 1 on the way. Yeah, I miss anything. I feel like we love Jesus.
Yeah, that's
I feel
it.
like that's pretty much it. It's not that complicated.
Yes, well that's awesome. So, how did you guys meet and how long have you been together?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So how we met at Baylor University, just on campus, 2010, 2011. We've been married for 5 years, going on 6, September 20th, 2014. Yeah, something like that. But yeah, so that's we've been together 5 years, like she said, 2 kids and 1 more on the way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, when you guys met at Baylor, kind of walk us through how that looked. Did you guys know each other on, like, were you friends first, or did you see Karis and you just shot your shot? Like, how did you guys start dating?
So actually, the first night, Baylor does something called Serenade, and basically they're trying to get Baylor people to marry and meet, so they can send their kids to Baylor and they can take your money for your entire life. But we met kind of that first night. That was the first night that I saw him. Is during this process where they have all the guy dorms come by the girl dorms and they sing you a song, and like they try to introduce all the guys to the girls. And he was a CL at that time, or an RA, basically the same thing. And so I had actually kind of first saw him. That was the first time I ever saw him in person, was on that day. But before I ever got to Baylor, I had friends who went to Baylor, and they showed me pictures of him and his ex-girlfriend before I even got there. And they were like, look at how cute this couple is. Aren't they adorable? They're like the campus couple and blah, blah. And I was like, oh, okay. So I knew even before attending there that this was a guy who had a girlfriend and he was taken, and they were the campus couple and they were really cute. So even though I met him on that first night of Serenade, it was just like oh, hey, we have mutual friends type of thing.
Mhm.
And so we just were in the same mutual friend groups for a really, really long time. We were in the same campus Bible study, which is kind of how we had those mutual friends. But that's really kind of how we got to know each other, was just in the midst of being friends. And he was in a relationship, and then shortly after I got to Baylor, so was I. And so we were just friends for a while, a while.
Okay. And so, how long did you guys date before you got engaged?
About a year and a half. Was it about a year?
That's a great question.
Oh,
2012 was when we like made it official.
Uh-huh. I
And
thought it was earlier than that, but I thought it was 2000 and I don't know. I think it was 2012.
yeah, I think it was
April 10th.
it was
April 10th.
2012. He remembers
Okay, so
the date we made it official.
were you guys still in college, or were you graduating?
Yes.
Yeah, we were.
Yes. We were still in college, made it official in 2012, got engaged in 2013, got married in 2014.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, by the time you got married, had you graduated from college yet?
Yes. So Josh had, in what year was that?
2012.
2012, Josh graduated from college at
Okay.
the end of 2012. Yeah. And in 2014, that would have been my final year in college, but I got married and started running a business full time instead.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. Okay, so what is you guys' background? Did you guys grow up in a single parent household or a 2-parent household? And did you have positive examples of what relationships looked like?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of our greatest blessings is coming up with great examples. And we come from two different backgrounds, but we both had great examples of marriage and what it looked like to be in a relationship. But I come from a two-parent household. My parents were married over 30 something years. So my dad recently passed away, so they're no longer married. But yeah, so I come from a two-parent household with a great example of what a long-lasting marriage looks like.
Yeah, and my mom was a single mother. She actually had me at Texas A&M while she was in college there. And she was a single mother until I was about 9, and then she married my stepdad, who is pretty much, I mean, my dad, I call him dad. And so from there, I was able to see, you know, up close a two-parent household. But up until that point, my grandparents were a really big influence in my life, and still were and are past that point until my grandmother recently passed away this past December. But they were married for a very, very long time. I can't
Got the
even,
years, yeah.
lots of years, maybe 40 plus.
Okay.
And so that was really what I looked to growing up as my example of marriage and what that looks like. I was with them a lot also just because my mom was a working single mother. I was always hanging out with them and at their house. And so I really got a close-up look, you know, from that point till 9, and then got an even closer look when my mom got married to my dad.
Yeah, no, that's amazing because a lot of times people don't have those positive examples. So for both of you, even though it was different circumstantially, still having those influences, I think that's a beautiful thing. So, Kariss, I know that you come from a family who is in ministry and you guys have a spiritual legacy. Tony Evans being your father, your mom being a published author, your aunt Priscilla Shire, who travels the world speaking and ministering. How did your generational spiritual legacy affect the choices you made while dating?
Yeah, I think that I inadvertently knew what I was looking for. I don't think that I realized that who I was looking for was because of how I was raised. But I definitely knew who I could and could not bring home, and that affected my decision making when looking for someone to marry. Because I definitely had a goal of leaving college with my husband because I wanted to be married young. I wanted children young. I wanted to start that portion of my life at an earlier age rather than later. And I knew that early on because my grandparents modeled that. They got married young, they had children young. And so that's what I saw and that's what I wanted for my own life. And I knew that because that's what I was looking for, there was a very specific type of man that I was also looking for in that. And I don't think that I consciously went into it like, okay, this man needs to want to be married young, want to have children young, want to do this. And I don't think that was a conscious thought for me. But looking back on my decision making patterns, that's definitely what I was looking for when I was, looking through my options, so to speak.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And Josh, what about you? Were you raised in church?
Yeah, definitely. My background is, like I said, my parents kind of modeled that for me, but even further than that, my grandparents, you know. So my grandparents, they've been together literally since elementary school. Like they
Oh, wow.
grew up in the country, you know, went to the same schools, and they've been together literally since elementary, married over 60 some years, but known each other, been together for that long. And so my parents, kind of the same thing. They got together really early, but just like Kara said, before I even went into college, I was like, you know, it'd be best for me to leave with a wife because once I blow up, no, I'm just kidding, but but no, I just had seen how a woman can partner with a man that can build a family and become so much better doing life together than if I were to do life by myself. So I seen that principle really early. People who I've looked up to, a lot of times I saw, you know what, they had a wife, a partner at the beginning who was there before they had anything else, who helped them get to where they were faster. I mean, I saw it with my mom and dad, like I mentioned before. I saw how better of a man my mom made my dad. He was a great man alone, but he was even better with my mom. So I just knew I would be a better man, not with just any woman, but Kara specifically when I met her. So
And I mean, that's incredible that you had that mindset, especially you were in college when you propose. And typically, when you're in college, that's when the turn up happens, that's when the party happens. But if you were having,
Did that.
yeah, I'm like, if you're having the mindset at Baylor talking about, I'm just looking forward to my wife who's going to add all this value, like that's a mature mindset to have in college. So that's amazing. So Josh, being that you were in college when you proposed to Kariss, how did you know she was the one?
Oh, it was pretty simple. I think most guys know, but just like I said, I wanted to have a partner to ultimately raise a family and help build the kingdom on earth, right? So how did I know? She was doing that before we were married. Like, so she was motivating me to study harder. She was helping me when I was studying. In college, when I had started the business, she helped me grow the business. So
I remember that. He'd be studying. I'd be like, what do you want to eat? Like, don't get up. I'll bring you food. I was pulling out all the stops.
anyway, no, it was just it was pretty noticeable. I knew what I wanted. I knew what I needed. And I'm still learning. But yeah, I think knowing what you want, knowing what you need, having a blueprint based upon the Bible of who your wife should be, what some characteristics she should have, going through all of that, and then not only knowing it, but also experiencing it, going through the hard times, making it out of the hard times, all those things did nothing but solidify the decision that Kariss was the one.
Wow, that's amazing. And then, Karis, for you, did you know automatically, like, okay, this is the one that I want to spend the rest of my life with?
I did know. I think I have like a journal entry like 2 weeks in or 3 weeks into our relationship saying like he's the one. Josh is a little more logical with his decision making. I think that he took the time to like, pinpoint each quality and, really mull over, his, I don't want to say options, but just, if he wanted me and if my personality traits meshed up with his, he's just a very logical person.
Yeah.
So the way that he approached that, I think, is different than the way I did. But I really think it helps us in the long run, just how we approach things differently. But I did know, I just had a feeling. I just felt like, okay, he checks all the boxes and not that I had a list of like, must be this height and like those shallow things. But I remember when I was in high school, I was going to a camp named Pine Cove that I ended up being a counselor at later. But one of the counselors gave us what a godly man looks like from a biblical standpoint. Like, must be generous. Like, does he quickly anger? Like those types of checklists. And so when I always in my head matched up the guy that I'm dating with this biblical set of checklists. And Josh immediately matched up with those because I had prior knowledge of who he was. And not only, in dating, but we were friends before and, friends in a group before. And so I was able to really see those characteristics before I had even thought to consider him as an option, for my husband, because he was in a relationship and I wasn't thinking that way. So I really got a chance to see in depth who he was, and what other people thought about him and how he was on campus and all that without being clouded by the, oh my gosh, he's so cute and oh, I want to date him, because that just wasn't where I was mentally at that point in time. And so because I had, I guess, seen those things beforehand, when we did start talking in that way, I was like, oh, this is it.
Yeah. So prior to meeting one another, were you guys pursuing healthy relationships? Were you dating with the purpose of getting married? Like, what did your relationships look like before meeting one another?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do have something to say on the other question, which leads into this question, though, and not to take anything away that I just said, because she definitely met the requirements, the standards and all that. But when it comes down to knowing and saying, okay, she's the one, another large part of that decision is the decision you have to internally make as a man to commit to that woman, right? So a lot of times she can meet it, but you also, a large part of that was deciding, I do want to get married. I'm going to stick this out, and she is going to be the one. Why? Because that's the one I choose. And so that's a large part. I don't want people to get confused and saying, okay, it has to be perfect. They got to check this and that. Mm-hmm. And that's how I know that person is the one. A large part is first making the commitment within yourself to say, this is who I'm going to love, this is who I choose, and now that's why he or she is mine and perfect, and we're gonna make it work. So I just wanted to say that. But it also, and this is how I learned that, was through a previous relationship. Meaning, before, when I was dating, yes, it was on purpose, but it didn't work out. But so from that though, I learned that it's going to be up to me to make it work. I can't necessarily rely on just anybody just to say, okay, now it's going to be perfect, right? So to your question, previous relationship, yes, we had other boyfriends or girlfriends, whatever you want to call it, but and that was on purpose too. I mean, it was a great learning experience to know how to treat Kariss in this relationship. So
I will say that my dating was not on purpose. Prior to Josh, I think that even though I knew what I wanted leaving college, I don't think I was prepared as to what that looked like realistically in terms of going into a relationship, and like, how do I vet a person, and how do I know if what they're saying is true and real, and how do I respond? I don't think I was I will say that I was naive. I think that rom-coms and love story books that I read in high school definitely did not set me up for success in the real world. And I think that I was naive in a lot of ways. And in my previous relationships, what I got caught up in was being in a relationship for the attention. I think that, for lack of a better way to say this, in a relationship, I was an attention hoe. Like, I just love the attention. I just I ate it up. I just love the feeling that came with getting attention from a guy who says you're attractive and says you're all these things and affirms you in all these ways that you've longed to be affirmed in. And so I think that going in, to my previous relationship before Josh, I don't think I ever even knew his birthday. Like, I don't think I ever knew very key things about him that are important in a relationship. And I think that I was just blinded by what it feels like to receive love, whether real or not. And so going into Josh, I think that Josh really taught me what it looks like to be pursued in a very intentional, godly way that's not just about me. And so I had to learn that a relationship is not one-sided. It's not just about what you can get from it. It is a lot of sacrifice, and it is a whole lot of giving. And so, yeah, that was, I guess, my answer to the prior relationship.
No, and I think that's good, and I thank you for transparently sharing that, because sometimes people think, oh, because I am desiring a relationship that the foundation is Christ, that it's going to be perfect. And so I love to share examples of people that aren't perfect, but they're progressing. And if the relationships in the past weren't it, but you learn things and Josh brought things out of you that are helping you in your marriage, that's a beautiful thing. So now I just kind of want to touch a little bit on business. So Josh said you guys were in college and you supported him while he was building a business. Was it the photography business?
yeah, media production, photography, and videography.
Yes. And so now you guys both work together. You have a thriving company. Tell me what it's like to be married and business partners.
It's great. It's the best of both worlds, and it can be the worst of both worlds. But majority of the time, I feel like I'm at a total advantage because I get to work every day next to her, who is the person who knows me the best. So she's right there. I can give her a look. I can say whatever it is. Nobody will be able to communicate and understand and run with me and see the big vision and all. Like, I just can't go to somebody else's office and get that type of working relationship. So, and it's been.
You better not go to somebody else's office and get that working relationship.
So at the end of the day, I feel like I'm 200% to everybody's 100, right? Because I do get to work. So it's a huge advantage. I wouldn't want to work with anybody else. And I try to tell anybody who's starting their business, first thing you should do is get your wife at least on board, support. She may not have to be in the business, because that may not how she is bent. But you're going to at least, at minimum, want her encouragement and want her support. So I love it. I couldn't imagine any other way. This was always the plan and the goal since we started building in college. So
I love it. Yeah. And so to kind of start wrapping up, so you guys have two children, one on the way. How has having children changed the dynamic of your relationship? And what do you do to keep the spark alive? I have two young children myself, so I know how difficult it can be managing house and business. How are you guys making that work? Everybody, let's take a deep breath.
Yeah. How are we making it work? A lot of grace, a lot of patience, a lot of flexibility. You know, you can't get too comfortable in any one season, I believe, because if your goal, which is ours, is to grow, then you won't be where you were, hopefully, last month or the past couple of weeks. So, me, it's continuing to focus. How do you get through all the craziness? Continue to focus on the goal, where you're going, and then every now and then look at your progress. So look back, but just to see how far you have come, and that gives me encouragement that we will definitely be able to get out of whatever craziness we're in right now. But taking if you want to get out of the craziness, or how do you handle it at that moment, well, we have help. You know, we empower other people to use their strengths to help us, whether it's in business, whether it's at the house, family. So we ask for help for sure, and we get that, and so we're able to do what we do because we have a great team. And then even more specifically on that, so how do you manage a team and get help? Well, Kariss does a great job at getting down to the nitty gritty of making schedules, having constraints, or whatever it is to be organized and to make sure you're executing the things that have to happen. And for us, the home and family, our kids, that has to happen. You can't outsource everything. No, right. So we prioritize it that way, and we don't let the chips fall where they may. We kind of, set some boundaries for them to fall. But at the end of the day, we try to stay ahead and try to plan and stay organized as best as we can to stay on top of the madness. But Kariss probably can talk more because she's the one actually in the trenches.
Yeah.
Well, are you meaning like more in terms of our relationship, or just in general, like how do we handle business ownership and children and all of that?
More in terms of your relationship. And Kariss, I'll kind of switch the question a little bit for you. Josh definitely provided a lot of valuable information, but for you as a wife, a mother, now being pregnant, how do you stay intentional about pouring into your relationship with Josh? So, right, like as business owners, sometimes we can pour into business and that can be our number one priority. But how are you making sure that you're pouring into your relationship with him?
Yeah, honestly, I don't even think you know this. I schedule it. I schedule it like mentally.
Yeah.
Like if to myself, I say, okay, Thursday night, I'm going to make a point to be intentional with Josh in some kind of way. It could be fixing him a bowl of ice cream. It could be, time. It could be whatever it is. But mentally, I schedule it. And I don't write it down, and I don't tell him. But usually, the way that I do that is to schedule it. At least once a week, I try to do something intentional for or with Josh in some kind of way.
Yeah.
Because it is very, very hard to balance children and business, and managing the people who are helping you balance the children and the business, and also making sure that Josh feels loved. But I will say that, and I know this to be true across the board from my friends and from family, that husbands will let you know when they need you. And that does not mean that they are communicating it with words. It could be, their attitudes, and I'm not saying like in a negative, bad way or anything like that, but just when something's off with your man. And usually my mental list is like, has he eaten? Like, has he been fed physically? Is he hungry? Like, is he physically hungry? Have I had an attitude? Has he felt disrespected in any kind of way? And so a lot of times, like, my alarm system is going down this sort of checklists of, okay, where is he at? Have I done anything to disrespect him? And create this crazy cycle of disrespect, and then I don't feel loved, and then I disrespect him again, and that's how it can get crazy. And so usually when I notice there's a little fault in our relationship or something is not there, I mentally go down the list and try to figure out what I can do.
Absolutely. And I think that having those mental checklists That's something that I'm going to be implementing in my marriage. So thank you so much for sharing that. So the last question I want to ask you guys is, what is a piece of advice that you can give to singles who may look at your relationship and think that, that's something that they desire to have one day? What advice would you give to singles who are waiting and preparing to have a healthy marriage one day?
Um,
Amelia?
uh, I would just say, if you are single right now and you're open to getting married or open to being in a relationship, I would say make sure you're aligned first with Christ, and then do you, you know what I mean? Especially if you're if you're a female or a male, whatever. Do what God has called you to do, and as you're doing that, look right and left. See who's running with you. See who's running the same direction with you. And I would say those are healthy candidates for somebody you should live the rest of your life continuing to chase the calling God's put in your heart, right? And so I would say that, and I say that from just the experience of our own relationship. We started, we were pretty good, but once we got married, we experienced difficult times, and basically the love that I have for our marriage and for my wife and all of that I experience now because we almost lost it. So I would just say, it's easier to build a great marriage than to repair one. So from the beginning, really start focusing on your calling, because when you fast forward 10 years, fast forward 25 years, you don't want to stay in that mold that you had for that man or that woman, right? At the end of the day, God is your source, and you're going to want to make him happy above even your wife or your husband. So focus on that first. Run that race, run your race, learn about yourself, make sure you know yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, and that will help you get a better vision for who your mate should be. And once you see it, you'll know it.
Yeah, thank you. And Ferris, what would you say to the single women who may get on social media and they may scroll and start feeling down about themselves because they don't have it yet? What would you say to them?
I would say get off social media if that's what it's causing you to do. Number one, social media is a whole nother topic of conversation, but I would say you have to, what is the word that I'm looking for? Surround yourself with women who are maybe a little bit more advanced in their singlehood. And I've found that with advancement in your singlehood, or women who are single, comes a what is the word I'm looking for? Not complacency, contentment in that stage, and not to look at them and say, oh, I'm going to be single like them. And if that's your goal, absolutely find one and hold tight to her. But to really look to someone who's been through what you've been through in terms of singlehood, and see how she got through those difficult phases in her life. If social media is a thing, if people with families are causing you to be in want of something that God hasn't called for you right now in this season, unfollow. I invite women, unfollow me if my life is making you to be in want of having a relationship and having children. Because just like there are highs of being married, there are so many highs of being single. There are things that I could do when I was single that I cannot do now, and vice versa. Just like there are lows of being married, there are lows of singlehood too. And so you want to make sure to exalt the joys of your current situation, and also be able to look to someone who can see your lows and offer you great and sound advice.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And if anyone is interested in learning more about your business or what you guys have going on personally, where can they find you?
Yeah, they can go to ferrisphotos.com for any media production, photography, videography, marketing, weddings, all of that. And then also for more personal stuff, they can go to karissferris.com, where she writes a ton of blogs, devotionals, and encourages and educates women on how to live their best life.
And anywhere on social media,
Oh, yeah.
it's either Ferris Photos on Instagram, it's Ferris Photos on Twitter, it's Ferris Photos on Facebook, and for me, it's Kariss Ferris everywhere as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing your story, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of Dating with Purpose. We hope that it inspired you and that you learned some valuable information from their story. If you like this video, please go ahead and hit the thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And if you feel led, share it with a friend. We'll see you guys next time.